Hey there, friend. I'm so glad you're here. Today's story is about something many of us dream of doing, traveling alone, but not in a wild, chaotic way. This tale is soft, slow, and full of warm moments and quiet discoveries. Whether you're young or young at heart, this is your time to lean back, breathe deep, and enjoy a peaceful journey. Let's begin. It all started with a train ticket. A soft, cream-colored envelope tucked under my door, sent by my cousin who knew I'd been stuck in a quiet routine for too long. Inside was a single train ticket with a handwritten note. Go somewhere just for you. I had always loved the idea of solo travel, but never dared to try. What if I got lonely? What if something went wrong? But that morning, as the sun slipped through my curtains and birds chirped outside, I felt a little brave. So I packed a small brown suitcase with my favorite sweater, a book of poems, a sketch pad, and a little jar of tea leaves for comfort. I kissed Grandma on the cheek and promised to write postcards. She smiled and said, "The best part of any journey is finding the version of yourself you've never met before." The train station was peaceful, an old brick building wrapped in ivy. As I boarded, I found a window seat and watched the countryside roll past. Meadows dotted with wildflowers, cottages with smoking chimneys, and winding rivers followed us like quiet companions. I got off at a small village named Alderwick. The air smelled like fresh bread and rain-drenched pine. I checked into a tiny inn nestled between a tea house and a bookshop. The owner, a kind older woman named Elsie, handed me a brass room key and a slice of lemon cake on the house. My room was simple but perfect. A lace-curtained window overlooked a sleepy street lined with cobblestones and bicycles. A single daffodil sat in a glass jar on the bedside table. I spent the afternoon exploring on foot. Every corner of Alderwick felt like it belonged in a storybook. Children played hopscotch near the fountain. A sleepy tabby cat stretched across a bench. In the park, a man played violin under an oak tree, and his music floated through the air like something magical. As the sky turned rose gold, I sat by the riverbank and opened my sketch pad. I didn't draw anything grand, just the curved bridge, the ducks gliding by, and the way the light shimmered on the water. That evening, back at the inn, I sipped chamomile tea and listened to the soft creak of the wooden floorboards. I felt calm, I felt present, I felt quietly proud, because even though it was just the beginning, I had taken the first step. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. Not a storm, just a whispering drizzle that made the world look washed and gentle. I slipped into my favorite sweater and padded downstairs, where the scent of cinnamon toast and freshly brewed tea greeted me. Elsie, the innkeeper, was already tending to a pot on the stove. "Sleep well?" she asked kindly. "Very well," I smiled. "Your cake might have magical properties." She laughed. "I bake with honey and hope that might be it." After breakfast, I tucked my sketch pad and umbrella into my bag and wandered down to the nearby bookshop. It was a narrow little place called the Quiet Page, and the wooden sign outside had a painted cat curled up on a stack of books. Inside, the shop smelled like old paper and lavender. Soft music played from an old radio, and the shelves reached all the way to the ceiling, stacked with books of every size and color. I ran my fingers across the spines and let myself get lost in the hush of stories. That's when I met Arthur. He was the shopkeeper, a gentleman in his 70s, with silver hair and spectacles that kept slipping down his nose. He wore a green cardigan with mismatched buttons and smiled as if he'd known me for years. "First time in Alderwick?" he asked. I nodded, holding a poetry book with a worn leather cover. He motioned toward a table by the window. "Sit, read, stay as long as you like. We believe in slow afternoons here." So I did. I read about faraway rivers and quiet hearts, while the rain painted the outside world in silver light. Arthur brought me a cup of rosehip tea and a plate of butter biscuits. "You'll find that Alderwick grows on you," he said, "especially when you're alone. It listens better that way." In the afternoon, the rain let up, and I strolled through the village market. There were knitted scarves, hand-carved trinkets, and jars of flower honey. I bought a small pendant shaped like a crescent moon and a sprig of lavender for my suitcase. Later, I returned to the river and sat beneath the willow tree. A little girl feeding ducks nearby came over and offered me half of her sandwich. "My name's Lila," she said, "and you look like someone who needs a friend." We laughed and shared stories about favorite colors and silly dreams. Just like that, a stranger had become a moment I would always remember. That night, I wrote in my journal by candlelight. I wrote about Arthur and Lila, about lavender and tea, and how solo travel wasn't really about being alone. It was about opening space for wonder, for kindness, and for beautiful surprises. My final morning in Alderwick began with sunlight. Golden light spilled through the curtains, painting stripes across the wooden floor. Outside, the rain had gone, leaving everything fresh and glistening. Birds fluttered near the windowsill, chirping like they were excited for the day. Downstairs, Elsie had baked cranberry scones. She wrapped one in paper and handed it to me with a smile. "For the train," she said, "and for the road that's always waiting to welcome you back." I thanked her, slipping the warm parcel into my bag, along with the sketchbook that now held pages filled with willow trees, raindrop-spattered windows, and tiny drawings of teacups and cats. Before heading to the station, I made one last stop at the quiet page. Arthur was shelving books, humming an old tune. When he saw me, he smiled and handed me a small envelope. "A gift," he said, "to remember Alderwick by." Inside was a single pressed maple leaf, tucked between the pages of a poem about quiet places. "It's a reminder," he said, "that even when you return to busy days, the quiet you found here can always be carried inside you." I thanked him, feeling that warm tightness in the chest that comes when something is ending. "But you're grateful it happened." At the station, I sat on the same window seat, watching Alderwick disappear slowly behind me. I wasn't sad, not really, just thoughtful, because this trip, though simple, had left a gentle mark. When I arrived home that afternoon, the first thing I did was unpack slowly. I placed the lavender by my bed, the moon pendant on my shelf. I tucked the leaf and the poem into my journal and sat by the window with a cup of tea brewed from the little jar I had brought with me. Outside, the same street I'd always known stretched quietly beneath the evening sky. But it looked different now. Not because it had changed, but because I had. I realized solo traveling hadn't made me feel smaller. It had made the world feel more connected. A stranger's kindness, a bookshop's hush, the way a child can remind you to be brave with just a sandwich and a smile. And even though I was home, I wasn't back to normal. I had returned more curious, more calm, more myself. That night, I wrote one last line in my journal. I traveled alone, but I was never truly alone. Thank you so much for joining me for this soft, slow story. If it made you smile or reminded you of your own quiet adventures, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, and come back soon for more heartwarming tales like this one. Until next time, wherever you go, may you always carry a bit of peace, wonder, and the courage to wander gently.